It is NFL Draft Day, of course. Chiefs will be on the clock tonight in Green Bay. Of course, they're moving around this deal, so they're up there for the draft this week. Kevin Kietzman, you hear him at 10 o'clock every morning here on KCMO with Kevin Kietzman Uncanceled. His podcast, obviously, will have a very heavy NFL draft theme today. That is Kevin Kietzman Has Issues. Find it wherever you get your podcasts. Well, Kevin, it's another year where the Chiefs obviously are not picking till late in the first round. So for those who are just catching up today, kind of like a crash course for the Chiefs in the draft, what are the needs they're looking at right now?
I think they're looking at defensive line first and foremost, but certainly offensive line as well. I think they like their skill position players across the board. When you have your coach and quarterback like the Chiefs do, the draft becomes easier. There was a report out this week from The Athletic. They ranked 1 through 32, the best draft teams of the last 5 years, and the Chiefs are number 2 in the league at this.
Is that right?
And they've been drafting at the back of the draft. So the only team that's been better is the Lions, which probably would surprise some people. But the Chiefs are the second best drafting team in 5 years. They cited Creed Humphreys as one of the all-time great selections in NFL history because I don't know where he was taken, 60-something. Was he a second-round pick?
Yeah, second or third.
They're like, wait a second, you got the best guy in football in the second or third round. Their worst pick over the last 5 years, they said, was Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
I was going to wonder if it was him.
But he's still in the league. He's playing for the Saints. So he had some problems off the field. He had PTSD and some things he'd been through. It wasn't that he wasn't a talented guy or whatever, but they've just been great at this. Now, maybe you're great at it because you're winning games. They've been to all those Super Bowls, so you have to grade these young players that always play. They have to have cheap players. The Chiefs cannot afford to miss in the draft because if they get bad players, these guys have to play. The Chiefs are the only teams like, we draft these guys. They have to play cheap players because they're paying a handful of guys so much money. That's why it's so important for them.
So I've seen offensive tackle, you mentioned some guy from Ohio State I've seen get attention, a defensive tackle from Mississippi State. Is there like someone at the top of Kevin Kietzman's wish list coming tonight?
No, in fact, I'm terrible. I used to go and prepare for all these drafts and know all these players and everything else. And then, first of all, if you study 20 guys, it's only going to be one.
Yeah.
I feel like I've wasted a lot of time doing that.
That's a good
right?
point.
The other thing is anything the Chiefs let people know, what they let out, what they lead people on, all these stories you read, oh, the Chiefs are leaning, they like this guy. They had a really good interview with this guy at the Combine. They were impressed with this. They're lying. Okay, the Chiefs are lying. They do it on purpose. It's not really lying. Like your mom says you can't lie to people. That's different than sports. Sports, it's never lying. You don't want the other teams to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You don't want the media to know what you're doing. Did anybody know they were drafting Patrick Mahomes? No. What about when they got the kid from K-State, Felix Anudike-Uzomah? Nobody had a clue they were looking at him. They were pushing in every other direction. So, no, it's a total waste of time to think you know what the Chiefs are going to do. I do believe they would like to trade up. They've said, and I believe this, that maybe they have 18 to 20 players they believe are first-round quality draft choices, and then the next 10 or 12 are just chicken scratch. So I do think they'd like to trade up, but whether they can do that or not, who knows?
So for those that don't know, tonight the NFL draft is just the first round, then what, second and third tomorrow,
Right, yep.
And then, of course, 4 through 7 on Saturday. So do they have the draft capital to move up tonight in the first round? Because that can be pretty costly, right?
They do. They got an extra pick for the trade that they made with Tennessee for L'Jarius Sneed. They got an extra pick in there. They've got 8 picks, so they've got enough. 6 players maybe is enough for the Chiefs if they're the right 6. So, yeah, there's always – and they can always trade a pick from next year.
Yeah.
Teams love that as well. Chiefs can always move up, but it's got to be their guy. My guess would be if the Chiefs move up, they covet an offensive tackle that's really good. Okay. And they're like, wait a second, this guy fell to 18, we got to get him. They know who they can get at 31 for an offensive tackle. If they think that other guy is way better and they can trade up 10 spots or 11 spots because he's fallen in the draft, they may do that.
All right, now we're talking about Lambeau Field tonight. That's where the NFL draft is going to be, home of the Packers. We were here in Kansas City a couple of years ago when the draft was here. You like this, what the NFL is doing, or would you go back to the old days of Radio City Music Hall, New York City, the whole deal?
It's great. I wrote in a newsletter about the draft over the weekend for the patrons of my podcast. It started in 1936. A guy named, I think, Berwanger was the first player ever drafted, and he never played a snap of pro football.
Is that right?
Yeah. No, it goes way back, and they never envisioned it would be something like this. The NFL sells this off to cities like we did here in Kansas City with FIFA. The teams are involved, obviously, but they make money back. It's cool that there's no admission. You don't have to pay for a ticket. That's awesome. The cities love hosting it. I think it's a great idea to move this thing around. Now, Lambeau's got a giant atrium. They're going to have a theater where they actually do the draft. I haven't seen how that looks, but it's reasonable to believe it's going to be kind of cold outside Lambeau and the fan experience and all that. I think it's great that they do this.
So they're not going to be in the stadium.
They're using the stadium.
Okay.
I'm not sure where the Fan Fest will be. It could literally be set up on the field. I don't know, or the surrounding area. There's what they're calling the draft theater is where the draft will take place, and that will be heated. There's no question.
Okay.
And I don't know how many it holds, maybe 5,000 people. They're building some sort of a theater. There's a huge atrium at Lambeau, and that could be where their theater is. That they may open it with tents and do some other things like that. I'm not really sure how they're doing it. And maybe they get a great day. I don't know, but they definitely had to prepare for cold.
I love what they're doing. I guess it was, Vegas a couple of years ago, Kansas City, Lambeau. I don't know where it's going. But to your point, good local economic, growth for some of these cities. Now, what it costs them remains to be seen, but I see no downside.
No, there's no downside. What's cool is it's in Green Bay, not Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Like they could have gone to Milwaukee at all the facilities they needed. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
no, Lambeau's the show. Lambeau Field is the show. So I think that's really cool. And I like draft stories.
Yep.
Like you've heard of this player. Many of our listeners maybe have heard of a player named Travis Hunter. He's from Colorado. He plays receiver and corner.
Yep.
He's already stated, I'm not going to play for any team that doesn't let me play both sides of the ball. Well, you wonder why he's a diva? His dad is attending the draft tonight, and he'll be picked very early. He's allowed to go because the judge is allowing him to travel to Green Bay to see it. He's had gun and drug charges and is on home arrest and can't go anywhere. They're letting him fly to Green Bay and stay at the hotel and be in the room when his son is drafted. Then he's got to go back and put his ankle bracelet on and go back to his home where he's confined.
Well, speaking of great stories in Colorado, Deion Sanders' kid is one of the top quarterbacks off the board tonight, Shedeur Sanders. You buying the Shedeur Sanders story? I mean, big K-State and KU fans will know him from the Big 12, but you think he's going to be anything or no?
I hear a lot of people say he's really accurate with his passes, and I've gone back and watched some video, and he did have some really accurate throws, and maybe he's got that innate talent in him to be a very accurate passer. That's the single most important thing for an NFL quarterback is to be accurate. If he's that, then yes, he can be the real deal. But we saw a report yesterday where some scout or insider who was in the room when they interviewed Shedeur Sanders' formal interview about the draft, they said it was the worst interview they'd ever sat in and that he's entitled and we're not touching him. So that kind of adds up. I would think Shedeur Sanders would be entitled.
Is there a KU, K-State, Mizzou prospect? I don't see any in the first round that I'm aware of, but is there a can't miss prospect from one of our local teams?
Absolutely. Missouri Tigers may have a couple. They got a big offensive lineman from Lee Summit that could be drafted very early. Their wide receiver, obviously an absolute stud. The Chiefs would like. A lot of people have thought about maybe him dropping to 31. I don't know that he's going to last that long. And then two running backs from the state of Kansas won't go tonight, certainly, but they look like they're going to get drafted. Devin Neal, who was from Lawrence, played for KU, and DJ Giddens, who's from Junction City, that played for K-State. It looks like there'll be two running backs in the NFL. We don't know where they'll go.
DJ Giddens, that could be one of the more underrated picks of the draft. He's a big guy and a solid back. Do you like him?
He is. It was funny because, my friend Stan Weber, who's an analyst, says the funny thing about Giddens was he never got caught. He'd break into the open and he would score, and you'd watch him and go, well, he's not very fast, but he didn't get caught. So then you started worrying about the defense, the competition, whatever.
Yeah.
But then he busted out a really fast time at the combine. So I think he's deceptively fast. He doesn't hit the hole. He doesn't see the hole between the tackles like an NFL back needs to. He's a set-up play kind of guy, like a screen pass or out on the edge and gone. Devin Neal's the opposite. He slithers through the line and finds little holes. He's got really great vision. He's probably not as, statistically speaking, as high a rated back as Giddens is. I just think it's crazy. We got two running backs that went to high school in Kansas that could be playing in the NFL. That's unusual.
That is pretty cool stuff. Yeah. Kevin Kietzman Has Issues is the podcast, leaning heavily into that draft. And then, of course, Kevin Kietzman Uncanceled coming up at 10 o'clock later today. It is draft day in Kansas City for the Chiefs on the clock tonight. First round taking place in Green Bay. We appreciate it, Kevin. Thanks, man.
Thank you, buddy. Always fun.